In 1925, Russian soldiers cornered rebels inside a cave in the mountains. But when they entered, there was something in there that was not human. The commanding general documented everything in an official military report. This is not legend. The Soviet government took this case so seriously that they created an entire scientific commission just to investigate this creature. And what they found will make you question everything you thought you knew about human evolution. While the whole world had its eyes fixed on the Cold War, on rockets and nuclear bombs, the Soviet Union was quietly investigating something else. Something closer. Something ancient. Deep in the Altai Mountains, where temperatures drop to negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit, and the wind erases every trace within minutes, dozens of military reports were filed describing the same thing. A creature standing over 7 feet tall, covered in hair, walking upright, capable of moving through frozen slopes at terrifying speed. Not a bear. Not a human. The local nomads had been calling it the Almasty for centuries. And here is what makes this story different from every other mystery creature story out there. Science got involved. And what it found did not close the case. It opened far more questions. The name Almasty, pronounced Almasty, appears in at least 8 different languages: Mongolian, Turkish, Kazakh, Persian, Russian, Armenian, Georgian. That alone is unusual. Mythological creatures typically stay within one culture. This one crossed borders independently for centuries. The descriptions are disturbingly consistent. Height between 6 and 7 feet. Body covered in reddish-brown or gray hair. Partially exposed face. Upright posture. No tail. No articulate language. But complex social behavior. Compare that to the American Bigfoot, which is larger, heavier, and spotted in temperate forests. The Almasty is described as leaner and more agile, built for extreme mountain cold. If these are real creatures, they are different animals from different regions. That alone is worth paying attention to. But what turns this legend into something beyond folklore is a decision made by the Soviet government in 1958. The official creation of the Commission for the Study of the Snowman. A real group, state-funded, staffed by credentialed scientists from the Soviet Academy of Sciences. These were not ghost hunters. This was Soviet institutional science investigating the possibility that an unknown human species was still alive. So what did they find? I will show you. But first, I need to take you to the place itself. The Altai Mountains sit at the crossroads of 4 countries: Russia, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and China. It is one of the most remote regions on the planet. The nearest inhabited city to the most documented sighting areas is over 185 miles away on rough terrain. Now look at what lives there. Snow leopards, gray wolves, Eurasian lynx, Siberian brown bears that can weigh over 1,500 pounds, Siberian ibex, Altai argali sheep, and the wolverine, a predator so aggressive it attacks bears twice its size. This is an ecosystem of apex predators in an environment where the climate alone can kill an unprepared human being within hours. Any creature that survives there has to be extraordinarily adapted. And here is the detail that modern science confirmed. Not as theory, as fact. Less than 90 miles from the main Almasty sighting hotspots sits Denisova Cave. In 2008, researchers found a fragment of a finger bone there belonging to an unknown human being. In 2010, genetic analysis confirmed it. It was a completely new human species. They named them Denisovans. This human species lived in the Altai Mountains. They coexisted with Neanderthals. They interbred with ancestors of modern humans. Millions of people today, particularly in East Asia and Oceania, carry Denisovan DNA in their genes. And then, somewhere between 30,000 and 50,000 years ago, they vanished. Or did they adapt? In October of 2011, the government of the Kemerovo region in Siberia did something unusual. They invited researchers from the United States, Canada, and several other countries to an official conference on the Siberian Yeti. This was not an informal gathering. It was a government-sponsored event. The expedition traveled to a Zeskaya cave in the Shoria mountain area. What they reported finding made headlines around the world. Footprints. A nest or bed made of branches arranged in a non-random pattern. And most importantly, hair samples. Dr. Igor Burtsev, the leading Russian researcher on the subject and the expedition leader, declared these were the most compelling physical traces ever collected. The regional government issued an official statement saying they had found what they called indisputable proof that the creature inhabited the area. Then came the DNA tests. And this is where the story gets complicated. 3 laboratories analyzed the samples. 2 in Russia and 1 in the United States in Idaho. Professor Valentin Sapunov of the Russian State Hydrometeorological Institute declared, and I quote, "We concluded that the hair belongs to a mammal, but not a human, and not any animal known to the region, such as a bear, wolf, or goat." He went further. The material is biologically closer to Homo sapiens than to any known primate. But here is where you need to pay close attention. Burtsev himself, the man who led the expedition, said he was skeptical of Sapunov's results. He stated publicly that he doubted a valid DNA test had actually been performed, and that the conclusions being drawn were premature. And a 2014 study led by British geneticist Brian Sykes analyzed 8 hair samples attributed to the Almasty across Russia. The Western conclusion was brown bear, horse, and cattle. So who is right? The honest answer is we do not know. Because the protocols used by the Russian laboratories were never published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. The Azaskaya cave hair samples specifically were never included in Sykes' analysis. And a Siberian brown bear, even one weighing 1,500 pounds, does not build structured nests from interlaced branches. That has never been explained. Now let me give you the most serious scientific theory behind the Almasty. Not the monster hunting version. The academic one. In 1964, a researcher from the Soviet Academy of Sciences published a formal hypothesis covered by the New York Times. The Almasty could be a relict population of Neanderthals or similar hominids that survived in the remote regions of Central Asia. This was not science fiction. It was an academic proposal serious enough to reach the international press. Then came the Denisovans and the theory gained new life. Because now we know, with scientific certainty, that distinct human species inhabited exactly this region. That they interbred with modern humans. That some populations lived in relative isolation for hundreds of thousands of years. The question the most serious researchers ask is not whether there is a monster in the mountains. It is this. What would be the actual difference between the last surviving member of an archaic human lineage and what these witnesses have been describing for centuries? The most disturbing case on record is that of Zana, a hair-covered woman reportedly captured in the Caucasus in the late 1800s. Unable to speak. Physically powerful beyond what any known human would be. Covered in reddish hair. She lived among villagers for decades and had children with local men. Those children were biologically human, but were noted for their unusual physical strength. Soviet researcher Boris Porshchenev interviewed Zana's descendants in the 1960s and examined skulls connected to her lineage. 6 anthropologists analyzed the skull of her son Quit and identified what they described as a mix of primitive and modern traits. Something that does not fit cleanly into any known category. Zana's own DNA was never properly extracted and sequenced. The remains were lost. Meanwhile, in the Altai Mountains, where extreme temperatures and impenetrable terrain still protect vast areas from any consistent human presence. The sightings continue. Nomadic herders, border guards, field researchers. So what do we actually have at the end of all this? We have an oral tradition spanning millennia, crossing dozens of cultures and languages, all describing the same creature. We have an official Soviet scientific commission that took the phenomenon seriously enough to fund real research. We have DNA results that contradict each other, and samples that have never been definitively analyzed. And we have a cave less than 90 miles from the epicenter of the sightings, where a previously unknown human species was confirmed by modern science. And we have the Siberian permafrost, melting further every year. In 2019, researchers found an 18,000-year-old dog perfectly preserved in the Siberian ice. In 2020, a cave lion cub with its fur completely intact. What else is preserved down there? The truth may not be a monster. It may be something far more unsettling. A relative that was never properly introduced. Russia's wilderness is large enough to hide almost anything. And while science was looking at the stars, something may have kept living between the rocks and the snow. So I want to know what you think. Does this case convince you more than the Congo's Makelmbembe? Or do you think the Siberian brown bear explains all of it? Tell me in the comments. Seriously, I want to know which of these two cases you find more believable, and why. Your answer might just shape the next video.